The congressional chamber quaked with the impact of a sudden thunderclap as the enormous figure rang out like a fired shot. Senator John Kennedy, celebrated for his incisive mind and resolute dedication to fairness, stepped into the lead role, his tranquil and assured voice resonating through the crowded hearing room. $82 million in taxpayer funds, he reiterated with purposeful emphasis, shifted from USAID to the Clinton Global Initiative, and its destination is no mystery to us. A ripple of astonishment swept across the onlookers, camera flashes igniting as reporters hurried to record the defining instant. Chelsea Clinton occupied the far table. Her stance upright in a refined outfit, her hands gripped tightly, knuckles paling under the strain. She kept quiet for the moment, her gaze darting to her legal advisors, a silent cue of the clash approaching. Kennedy's delivery stayed steady, requiring no dramatic flair, as he lifted a hefty folder marked with the Department of Governmental Ethics insignia, asserting that this wasn't conjecture or idle talk. It was solid proof, supported by financial ledgers, transfer records, and signatures converging on a singular disturbing outcome diversion. The morning's news cycles had already teased the scandal across digital platforms and airwaves, but here within this hallowed space, the truth crystallized into vivid form. Resources earmarked for struggling households, veterans in distress, and global aid initiatives had allegedly disappeared into a haze of extravagance and concealment. Rather than erecting medical facilities or educational centers, the funds were purported to have funded an $11 million residence and a $3 million wedding, with no tax filings and no projects completed for those in need. Kennedy unfurled the binder with a careful motion, his actions precise, and began to detail its contents, his tone resolute yet measured. All the documentation resides within these pages, he declared, casting the initial set of papers onto the screens, bank transfers navigating through complex channels, grant approvals bearing Chelsea Clinton's signature at the base. The crowd leaned forward, some murmuring in disbelief, as the stark disparity unfolded, commitments to support the disadvantaged, contrasted with bills for opulent estates and lavish ceremonies. This hearing is about upholding accountability. Kennedy continued his gaze, fixing on Chelsea with unwavering intent. No one stands beyond the law's reach, not the daughter of a former president, not a single individual. A wave of hushed gasps moved through the gallery, even seasoned watchers feeling the weight. This surpassed typical political drama, resembling the breaking of an unassailable shield. Chelsea drew a deep breath, cameras zooming in on her composed yet strained expression, her lips pressed into a firm line. On the screens, additional evidence scrolled by, outflows of $5 million in one case, $2.8 million in another, each linked to Clinton-affiliated entities, each lacking any charitable trace. Kennedy paused, letting the silence build, then addressed her directly. This isn't about party lines, Ms. Clinton. It's about the truth, about the hard-working citizens who contributed this money, expecting it to aid the vulnerable, not enrich private pockets. He recited the specifics, his voice carrying the weight of unassailable data: $3 million for a wedding, $11 million for a mansion, $0 reported to the IRS. That's not generosity. That's a breach of public trust. A congresswoman near the front raised a hand to her mouth in stunned silence, while a veteran in the stands nodded with a grim look, his face marked by frustration. Chelsea finally spoke, her voice initially steady, but edged with defiance. "These are fabrications," she insisted, a deliberate political strike. "My family has faced attacks for years. This is just another round." But as she spoke, the screens shifted to reveal compelling visuals, images of her extravagant wedding, alongside aid grant records, pictures of the sprawling estate, beside empty plots where promised facilities should have risen. The room grew quieter, the evidence pressing down like an invisible force. "Can you seriously expect us to buy this?" a committee member challenged, pointing to the displays. "Those look manipulated," Chelsea retorted, her composure slipping slightly as she highlighted the foundation's efforts to support the underprivileged. Yet the murmurs in the chamber hinted at skepticism. The public had grown tired of unkept promises. Kennedy edged closer to the mic, his expression reflecting steadfast determination. "Chelsea, the American people deserve honesty," he said with clear intent. "They deserve leaders who put their needs first, not their own, and they deserve to know where every dollar was spent." He turned another page, unveiling a series of internal memos outlining the diversions, each verified with dates and approvals tracing back to her oversight. "This isn't a smear campaign. It's documented fact substantiated by independent audits, and no spin can alter what's recorded here." Social media flared up instantly, hashtags like Kennedy Unveils Truth and 82 Million Scandal, trending as viewers tuned in across the country. In the hall, whispers turned to audible gasps, a few tentative claps rising from the back, as others sat in stunned quiet. Chelsea's cheeks flushed, her lips trembling faintly as she murmured, "You don't understand. We were trying to help people." Kennedy shook his head with firm conviction. "Helping people doesn't mean burying funds in luxury purchases. Helping people means transparency and real outcomes." The chairman struck the gavel to restore order, but the mood had shifted. The aura of invincibility surrounding the Clinton name had begun to splinter under the relentless glare of scrutiny. Kennedy concluded the opening phase with a nod to the committee, promising this was only the beginning, that deeper layers would emerge in the hours to come. The session paused for a brief recess, but the tension remained crackling and vivid as reporters raced to file updates, and the nation watched riveted by the unfolding saga. When the hearing resumed, Kennedy pressed on without pause, his voice as steady as ever. "Let's be upfront," he said, "this transcends mere figures. It's about a betrayal of the American taxpayer." More documents lit up the screens, detailed wire transfers, tax forms with glaring omissions, and Clinton Global Initiative memos detailing intentional concealment. "We've traced these funds directly into accounts tied to personal expenditures." Kennedy explained, his southern inflection, lending authenticity to his accusation. "Receipts show $3 million for the wedding, $11 million for the mansion. How does that assist families in need or build infrastructure overseas?" Chelsea tightened her grip beneath the table, insisting the claims were politically motivated attacks, that her foundation had supported real relief despite on-the-ground hurdles. Kennedy raised an eyebrow, undeterred. "Then why do we have 47 documented transfers with no charitable record? Why are veterans in Appalachia still without essentials, while this money vanished into luxury properties?" The room buzzed with intensity, senators exchanging glances as the press gallery typed furiously. Chelsea's response faltered. She cited partnerships with other groups and uncontrollable variables, but Kennedy persisted. "What you can control is reporting income, truthfully avoiding shell companies to mask assets, and speaking the truth here today." A collective intake of breath rose as he projected a key document, a grant approval with her signature clear as day. "Ms. Clinton, did you sign off on these?" a congressman asked directly. She hesitated, glancing at her counsel. "I signed many papers. I don't recall every one." Kennedy seized the moment with his trademark precision. "Thankfully, the records do recall, and we have them all: signatures, dates, recipients. This isn't about forgotten details. It's about holding power to account. For too long, elites here thought they operated under different rules, but that ends today." Murmurs of approval swelled from the audience, hashtags exploding online as the hearing trended worldwide. Chelsea tried to shift focus, highlighting her family's years of service and the relentless criticism they'd faced. "Service doesn't give anyone a pass to misuse public funds," Kennedy replied firmly. "Public life demands a higher standard, not a shield from justice." He pointed to the screens where images of neglected communities appeared: families in Haiti awaiting unbuilt schools, veterans sleeping rough, while promised aid vanished. This is who suffered while millions went to private indulgences. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by camera clicks. Chelsea shifted uncomfortably, her face paling as Kennedy added another layer, cooperating witnesses from her foundation providing sworn testimony about diverted funds under clear instructions. "That's not true. They're lying," she whispered hoarsely. "The documents match their accounts. Bank records back it up, and federal investigators have taken this to a grand jury," Kennedy countered calmly. The mention of a grand jury sent a jolt through the room. Committee members whispering as the chairman denied a recess plea from Chelsea's lawyer. The hearing would go on, and Kennedy, blending his folksy charm with cutting logic, pressed forward. "This is your moment to explain, Ms. Clinton. The people are watching." She stared at the table, her voice barely audible as she denied any intent to harm. "Intent doesn't restore stolen money or build the clinics that never materialized." Kennedy responded, his words striking a chord with the crowd who broke into applause despite calls for order. This felt like a historic turning point, a senator facing down a political dynasty in the unforgiving glare of accountability. As the first phase wrapped, Kennedy leaned back, his work far from done, but the groundwork set for a potentially seismic shift. The recess finally arrived, but the energy in the room endured a tribute to Kennedy's adept handling of the proceedings. Upon reconvening, he turned to taxes, his tone sharp yet fair. "USAID. Though grants require strict accountability, every dollar tracked, yet not a penny of this $82 million was reported as taxable income." Screens showed IRS forms with blank spaces, forensic reviews uncovering $27 million in unreported perks, vacations, cars, designer allowances disguised as expenses. Those were legitimate. Chelsea insisted, her voice trembling. "We work globally to help communities." Kennedy didn't waver, calling a $3 million wedding an outreach cost or an $11 million mansion a relief hub. The IRS labels that evasion. Gasps rippled through senators' murmuring as he revealed structured deals, 79 wires just under reporting limits. No accident, but strategy. Charts traced shell companies, Cayman accounts, emails showing top-down orders. He read from a memo dated before the wedding: channel payments through consulting LLCs, keep transfers under thresholds, mask with vendor bills. The room hummed, Chelsea's gaze fixed downward. "There's more offshore millions with no charitable trace." A senator asked about her direct role. Kennedy confirmed with digital signatures and emails where she approved minimizing exposure. Ensure no wire over 10K. Break into multiples, label as vendors. Silence descended, even supporters shaken. He added testimony of intimidation, whistleblowers threatened with lawsuits for questioning. "This isn't just money, it's power abuse." Chelsea broke, voice cracking. "You don't know the constant attacks on my family." "Criticism isn't persecution," Kennedy replied. "Truth is accountability." This systemic fraud deprived real help clinics in Haiti, jobs in Appalachia, instead funding galas and cars. She teared up. "We tried good. Mistakes happened. Good intentions don't excuse crimes," he said softly. "Americans deserve better." Then the bombshell: FBI, IRS, Doge, coordinating grand jury reviewing. Gallery chattered alerts flew, this a criminal prelude. Kennedy noted foreign donation questions, quid pro quo, broader influence network. What you've heard is the beginning. Next, how funds shaped policy, foreign benefits. The session adjourned for the day, but Kennedy's words echoed, "The era of unaccountable influence is over." The hearing room buzzed with renewed intensity as the recess ended, every eye locked on Senator John Kennedy, who returned to the podium with the same unflappable poise that had already made the session a national spectacle. The air felt heavier now, charged with the anticipation of deeper revelations, as cameras panned between him and Chelsea Clinton, who sat with her legal team, her expression a mask of controlled composure, hiding the strain beneath. Kennedy wasted no time leaning into the microphone with his signature Louisiana drawl folksy yet laser-focused as he signaled the shift to the next layer of the scandal. "We've established the basics," he said evenly, "but now let's peel back the curtain on how this money was hidden through a web of shell companies' offshore accounts and deliberate maneuvers designed to evade detection." The screens behind him lit up with intricate charts, arrows tracing a labyrinth of financial flows that started at USAID and vanished into shadows. First up, 79 wire transfers, each one carefully structured just under the federal reporting threshold of $10,000. No coincidence, folks, but a calculated plan to slip under the radar. Murmurs rippled through the chamber reporters typing furiously as the details sank in. Kennedy flipped through his folder projecting an internal memo from the Clinton Global Initiative dated weeks before Chelsea's wedding, with her name in the header. Route payments through consulting LLCs, it read, keep all transfers below reporting limits, use wedding vendor invoices to mask allocations. The room fell into a stunned hush, even committee members exchanging wide-eyed glances at the brazenness. "This isn't sloppy bookkeeping," Kennedy continued, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "This is orchestrated fraud, a system built to divert public funds into private hands without a trace." Chelsea shifted in her seat, her fingers drumming lightly on the table as her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. She interjected, her tone sharp but defensive. "Those memos are taken out of context. We were managing complex international operations, not hiding anything." Kennedy raised an eyebrow, undeterred, and countered with calm precision. "Context doesn't change the facts. Ms. Clinton, these instructions came from your team under your oversight, and they match the bank records to the letter." He revealed the offshore angle next screens displaying accounts in the Cayman Islands tied directly to the initiative, millions routed there with no documentation of charitable use. Our forensic accountants traced over $27 million in undeclared personal benefits. He explained vacations disguised as site visits, luxury vehicles labeled as transport for aid workers, designer expenses buried in operational budgets. The gallery gasped, a senator from the back row shaking his head in disbelief. Kennedy didn't stop there. He called forward testimony from former staffers, their sworn statements projected for all to see. One ex-employee described explicit pressure. "We were told to break transfers into smaller amounts to avoid IRS flags, and if we questioned it, we'd face lawsuits or blacklisting." Another recounted intimidation tactics, threats of career ruin for raising red flags about the missing funds. "This goes beyond individual errors," Kennedy emphasized, his tone grave yet fair. "It's a culture of secrecy and coercion, where whistleblowers were silenced to protect the scheme." Chelsea's face paled, her voice rising in rebuttal. "Those are disgruntled former employees with axes to grind. Our foundation has always prioritized helping people even if administrative hurdles got in the way. But the evidence mounted relentlessly, emails with Chelsea's digital signature approving the minimization of exposure, as one put it, by splitting wires and labeling them as vendor payments. Kennedy leaned forward, his eyes locking on hers. "Ms. Clinton, the American people aren't buying excuses about hurdles when the proof shows a deliberate design to dodge taxes and oversight." The chamber erupted in whispers, social media lighting up, with clips of the moment hashtags trending as the public tuned in live. A congressman interjected Senator Kennedy, "Do we have confirmation these shell companies had no real operations?" "Absolutely," Kennedy replied, pulling up incorporation documents, empty offices, no employees, just paper trails leading back to Clinton-linked entities. This network didn't build itself. It was engineered to funnel aid money into personal luxuries while claiming charitable intent. Chelsea's lawyer objected, calling for a recess, but the chairman overruled the momentum firmly with Kennedy. As the session deepened, he unveiled cooperating witnesses from financial institutions, their anonymized testimony describing red flags ignored under pressure from high-profile donors. One banker noted unusual patterns, funds bouncing through multiple accounts in a single day, always staying below thresholds with instructions matching the memos we've seen. The room's tension thickened spectators in the gallery, leaning forward, some nodding in approval of Kennedy's methodical dismantling. He paused for effect, then dropped another layer over 5 million routed to a Cayman account labeled as consulting fees, but our audits show it paid for property upgrades on that $11 million mansion. Gasps echoed a few quiet claps breaking out despite the chairman's gavel. Chelsea whispered to her team, her composure cracking as she addressed the committee. "We've built schools and clinics worldwide. This is a distortion meant to tarnish our work." Kennedy shook his head gently but firmly. "If that's true, where are the receipts for those projects? We've got empty lots in Haiti and unmet promises in Appalachia, while your records show luxury cars and gala expenses. The contrast is brutal, folks, and it points to a system rigged for personal gain." Social media exploded further, with live streams capturing every exchange, viewers praising Kennedy's no-nonsense approach. He continued revealing testimony about internal meetings where staff were instructed to creative account for diversions with Chelsea allegedly present. "This isn't just about money gone missing," he said. "It's about abuse of power, intimidating those who dared speak up." A former aide's statement flashed on screen. "I was threatened with NDA enforcement and job loss for questioning a transfer tied to the wedding." The gallery buzzed reporters, sending alerts as the scandal's scope widened. Kennedy wrapped the segment with a solemn note. "What we're seeing is an organized operation, not accidents, and it deprived real people of real help." The hearing broke for another short pause, but the revelations hung in the air. The nation riveted as Kennedy prepared to dive even deeper. Upon reconvening, he pivoted to the human cost, projecting images of communities left behind, families in poverty, staring at undeveloped sites promised years ago. "These folks paid the price," he said softly, while millions flowed through hidden channels. Chelsea tried to counter, "Mistakes happen in large organizations. We intended good. Intent doesn't build schools or feed families." Kennedy replied, his words resonating like truth. He unveiled more emails, one directing staff to use offshore entities for discretion, with Chelsea's approval noted. The room fell silent again, the weight of systemic fraud pressing down. A senator asked, "How widespread was this intimidation?" Kennedy responded, "Based on multiple testimonies, it was standard practice. Lawsuits threatened careers, derailed." This scandal isn't isolated. It's a pattern that protected the powerful at the expense of the public. Whispers turned to open discussion among lawmakers, the press gallery alive with activity. Kennedy closed the chapter of Revelations with a call for justice. "The truth is out, and it's time for full accountability. No more shadows, no more schemes. As the session adjourned for the day, the impact was clear. Kennedy's exposé had transformed the hearing into a reckoning, with Chelsea's legacy hanging by a thread, and the American people demanding answers. The story was far from over, but the network of fraud had been laid bare, leaving no doubt about its calculated nature. The congressional chamber hummed with a palpable sense of escalation as the hearing reconvened after the break. The crowd's murmurs growing louder with each passing minute, all eyes fixed on Senator John Kennedy, who stood ready to expand the scope of his revelations beyond personal misdeeds into the murky waters of international influence and systemic failures. The lights seemed brighter, the air thicker as cameras captured every nuance, panning between Kennedy's resolute figure and Chelsea Clinton, who sat with her arms crossed, her face a study in restrained anxiety. Kennedy adjusted his microphone, his Louisiana accent delivering his next words with the same blend of folksy wisdom and unyielding scrutiny that had captivated the nation thus far. "We've uncovered the money trail and the cover-ups," he began. "But now, let's talk about where some of that $82 million really came from, foreign entities using the Clinton Global Initiative as a backdoor to shape American policy." The screens behind him illuminated with a complex flowchart arrows connecting international organizations to the foundation and onward to U.S. government offices, flags of various nations dotting the diagram like warning signs. 24 million of those dollars traced back to foreign governments and consortiums. Kennedy explained, his voice steady but laced with gravity, some directly linked to lobbying for trade deals and policy favors. Gasps echoed through the room, reporters scribbling furiously as the implications sank in. He clicked to the next slide, revealing a series of emails with Chelsea's name in the chain subject lines reading, "Policy Memo for Donor Review and Favorable Terms Discussed with Contributors." These aren't innocent partnerships. Kennedy continued, these are quid pro quo arrangements, money in access out, and the American people left in the dark. Chelsea leaned forward, her voice cutting in with a mix of indignation and defense. Those donations were legal collaborations for global good. You're twisting them into something sinister. Kennedy didn't flinch. Replying calmly, legal donations get declared, Ms. Clinton. They don't buy secret meetings with State Department officials or influence bills that hurt American workers. He projected one such email dated shortly after a major donation from a foreign energy group where Chelsea approved, arranging a briefing noting, "Ensure donor priorities are highlighted." The chamber buzzed, a senator interjecting, "Are you suggesting corruption on an international scale?" "I'm presenting the evidence," Kennedy responded. Evenly money flowed in, policies shifted out, and emails show you were aware, facilitating access that bypassed normal channels. The gallery reacted with whispers turning to outright chatter. Social media exploding with clips of the exchange as viewers at home shared their outrage. Kennedy pressed on, revealing whistleblower testimony from former foundation insiders, describing closed-door sessions where donors outlined demands for aid projects not based on humanitarian need, but on political leverage, contracts awarded to favored companies, language inserted into U.S. legislation. "This isn't philanthropy, it's influence peddling," he said, his tone sharpening. "Foreign powers using your organization as a gateway to sway American decisions, all while skirting the Foreign Agents Registration Act." Screens displayed unanswered FARA disclosure requests sent to the initiative, official documents ignored for years. Chelsea's lawyer stood to object. "This is speculation without direct proof of policy changes." Kennedy countered swiftly. "The timeline doesn't lie. Donations spike, meetings happen, favorable policies emerge, and your emails tie it all together." The room fell quieter, even Chelsea's supporters shifting uncomfortably as images flashed of American communities impacted, factories closed, due to skewed trade deals, workers displaced, while foreign donors reaped benefits. This erodes our sovereignty, Kennedy emphasized, turning U.S. aid into a bargaining chip for elites abroad. The tension mounted as he transitioned to the systemic failures that allowed it all, projecting a timeline of warnings from the Department of Governmental Ethics dating back 5 years. Reports flagged suspicious transfers, undeclared income, questionable foreign ties, yet nothing happened. Why, Kennedy asked rhetorically, his eyes sweeping the committee, because Washington protected its own. Regulators feared backlash. Investigations got shelved under political pressure. He read from internal agency emails redacted, but damning dropped the Clinton probe, too politically sensitive. The audience gasped, a congresswoman covering her mouth in shock. This isn't just one family's issue, Kennedy declared. It's a broken system where oversight fails, watchdogs are muzzled, and scandals fester for years. Former regulators' testimonies scrolled on screen, one admitting, "We flagged undeclared streams, but were told to stand down or risk our jobs." Outrage built in the gallery, veterans and aid workers in the crowd shaking their heads at the betrayal. Kennedy gestured to photos of neglected sites, empty fields in Haiti, where clinics were promised, run-down areas in Appalachia, awaiting job programs, while millions circled through influence networks. The public deserves better than a government that looks the other way, he said firmly. Reforms are essential, mandatory audits for federal grantees, whistleblower protections, beefed up foreign donations publicly disclosed without exception. Chelsea whispered to her team, then spoke up. International work is complex. We navigated pressures to do good. Complexity doesn't excuse selling policy access, Kennedy replied softly but pointedly. Nor does it justify ignoring warnings that could have stopped this sooner. The chairman banged the gavel amid rising murmurs, but the shift was clear. The scandal had ballooned from personal fraud to a critique of institutional rot, with Kennedy positioning himself as the voice of reform. Social media trended with calls for change, viewers praising his unflinching exposure. He unveiled more intelligence reviews, flagging potential national security risks, from undisclosed lobbying, ongoing probes into FARA violations. This touches our democracy's core, he noted. Perception of policy for sale undermines trust worldwide. A committee member asked, were policies reversed upon discovery? Some are under review. Kennedy answered, but the damage lingers, jobs lost, alliances strained, all because oversight failed. Chelsea's face drained of color. I never intended harm to the country. Intent doesn't mend broken systems or restore faith, Kennedy responded, letting the words hang. The hearing paused again, but the revelations echoed, painting a picture of entangled foreign sway and domestic neglect that heightened the stakes immeasurably. As the session wrapped for the day, Kennedy's closing line resonated, accountability starts with fixing the cracks that let this happen. No more blind eyes, no more favors for the elite. The nation watched the scandal, now a catalyst for broader scrutiny. Chelsea's legacy teetering as the focus widened to the failures that enabled it all. The congressional chamber hung heavy with the weight of history as the final session of the hearing dawned. Every seat filled with a mix of lawmakers, journalists, and citizens, the air thick with a sense of closure, mixed with anticipation for what reforms might emerge from the ashes of the scandal. Senator John Kennedy, his presence as commanding as ever, rose to deliver the concluding remarks, his Louisiana drawl carrying a solemn tone that commanded respect from all sides of the aisle. The lights dimmed slightly for emphasis screens behind him, displaying a summary of the evidence uncovered over the day's financial trails, foreign ties, systemic lapses, all pointing to a betrayal that demanded justice. "This isn't the end of our work." Kennedy began, his voice steady and reflective, but the start of real change. "The evidence has been referred to federal prosecutors at the Department of Justice, with a special task force reviewing charges of wire fraud, tax evasion, and violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act." Whispers rippled through the room, cameras flashing as reporters captured the gravity of the moment. Chelsea Clinton sat silently, her legal team conferring in low tones. Her expression one of quiet resignation as the implications sank in. Kennedy held up a document bearing the DOJ seal outlining the path forward: IRS referrals for unpaid taxes and penalties, potential asset forfeitures to reclaim the misused funds for the people they were meant to serve, struggling families, veterans, and global aid recipients. The gallery stirred, some nodding in approval, others wiping tears at the promise of restitution. Chelsea finally spoke, her voice low and trembling. "I never wanted this to define my family's legacy. Mistakes were made, but our intent was to help." Kennedy nodded slightly, his response measured yet firm. "Intent is a start, Ms. Clinton, but it doesn't erase the harm or excuse the actions. True accountability means facing the consequences, no matter your name or history." The room fell into a respectful hush as he outlined proposed reforms, his words painting a vision of a stronger system. Mandatory annual audits for all organizations receiving federal grants, expanded protections for whistleblowers to encourage truth-telling without fear, and full public disclosure of foreign donations to prevent hidden influence. "These aren't radical ideas," folks, Kennedy said with a touch of his folksy charm. "They're common-sense safeguards to ensure no one exploits America's generosity again." A congressman from the committee leaned forward. "Senator, how do we implement this?" "Without gridlock," Kennedy replied, without hesitation. "It starts with bipartisan. We'll hold hearings on these bills, demand transparency from all sides, and let the American people vote with their voices." Social media lit up in real time, hashtags like "Reform Now" and "End Corruption" trending as viewers shared clips of his impassioned plea. He turned to the broader network, noting that the DOJ's investigation extended to similar nonprofits modeled after the Clinton Global Initiative, their names redacted, but the message clear. "This scandal exposes a web in Washington, and we're committed to untangling it all." Chelsea's cheeks flushed as she whispered, "This feels like the destruction of everything we've built." Kennedy addressed her directly, his tone compassionate yet unwavering. "Legacies are forged by actions, Ms. Clinton, and rebuilt through honesty. The law must apply equally blind to wealth or power." The chairman invited final questions, a senator asking about the grand jury's timeline. "Months, not years," Kennedy assured, emphasizing swift justice to restore public faith. As applause broke out sporadically, defying the gavel's calls for order, Kennedy delivered his closing remarks, speaking directly to the cameras and the nation beyond. America's strength lies in its promise that no one is above the law. Not presidents, not dynasties, not elites. What we've witnessed here is a betrayal, but also an opportunity to reaffirm that ideal through reform and vigilance. The audience hung on every word, some in tears, others inspired, as he outlined the lessons etched from this ordeal. First, accountability. It reminds us that position and fame don't grant immunity. Everyone must answer for their choices, ensuring justice serves all. Second, transparency and change. A fair government requires robust oversight, independent boards free from political sway, and active citizen involvement to spot and stop abuses before they fester. Finally, community education. We the people must stay informed, demand integrity from leaders, and participate in democracy to safeguard it. Vote, speak up, hold power, accountable for the Republic's health, depends on our engagement. These aren't abstract ideas, Kennedy concluded, they're the foundation of trust. By learning from this, we build a better tomorrow, where aid reaches the needy, foreign influence stays out, and elites play by the same rules. The gavel struck for the last time, adjourning the hearing amid a standing ovation from parts of the gallery, reporters rushing to file stories of a potential turning point in American politics. Outside, crowds gathered chanting for reform, while donations surged to watchdog groups and lawmakers pledged support for Kennedy's proposals. For Chelsea Clinton, the road ahead loomed uncertain: investigations, possible, prosecutions, a family legacy forever altered by the weight of evidence. Yet, for the nation, there flickered a renewed hope that truth could prevail, systems could mend, and justice could bind a divided people. Kennedy exited the chamber to a barrage of questions, offering one final thought. This was never about one person or party. It was about the American dream and ensuring it endures through integrity and action. The broadcasts faded, but the echoes of his message lingered, a call to reflection and reform that invited every citizen to ponder. What role will I play in upholding accountability? In the days that followed, polls showed plummeting trust in unchecked power, but rising support for transparency laws, proving the hearing's educational impact, empowering people to demand better, fostering a more vigilant democracy where scandals like this become relics of the past, not harbingers of decline.